Dead Scared Entertainment takes pleasure in presenting Verda Darano, a journey into the phantasmagoric lands of folklore, literature, theater, and film. In the centuries-old tradition of the Romani people, we bring to you stories of superstition, fantasy, and adventure. There's no turning back. The Verda approaches.
Latchi Ratyi Miro Amal. Good evening, my friend. I'm as Makalai. Picture this. A brisk October sunset blazes the amber and ruby leaves that rustle in the breeze high above. Pumpkins on porches, tombstones on the lawn. Patiently in suspense, as skeletons watch the remaining light of the sun fade into darkness. After every satisfying crunch, you step through the door, shed your coat, and nestle yourself in the blankets on the couch. You're home. You're safe. You're alone. Or are you? Does that thought bother you, Miro Amal? For our next guest, Emily, the company she keeps can be just as spooky as she is. There are those of us, Rom or not, who embrace the ghoulish pleasantries that sustain the same picture painted in words moments ago. Candlelit and shrouded in webs. It's rather cozy. Come. Besh. There's just enough room for one more.
Latchi Ratyi, Verda Darano fans, Dead Scared Entertainment fans, we have with us today a very special guest on our podcast. We have with us Emily, who happens to be a very close cousin in front of ours and a horror fan, which we obviously appreciate even more so.
She's actually the Emily that was in Hocus Pocus too. Emily! Yeah, that's her.
So this is the podcast. We'll see you. God bless.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. That's the end of the show.
Thanks for coming.
That's it. Watch how yous go.
Yeah.
So, though, to get it started, we'll start from the beginning. Where did you grow up? What was your experience like growing up, Rom? What were the positives, the negatives, and just tell us about that whole experience.
Growing up, I never had the privilege to appreciate my culture because I was always told that I needed to keep my culture on the down low and keep it hushed, and people can't know what you are or what we are as a family because American people don't like Rom. They stereotype us. People get killed overseas just for being a part of our culture if they say publicly what they are. And there was a specific memory that I have and that I have never forgotten and I always think about is when I was in kindergarten and it was like culture appreciation week. And there was like this big like presentation showcase like coming up that month where students could sign up and basically present something from their culture. And mind you, I'm in kindergarten at this time, so I didn't think anything of it. And the teacher was going around. I remember her being a older American woman, like maybe in her 60s or 70s at the time. And I think I was maybe 6. And she kind of went around and was asking the class, like, what is their culture? Like, what do they think, like, they're going to present? And so I told her that I was, can I say gypsy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is the one. Well,
We
yeah.
can say it.
We can say it.
Yeah.
I know we could say it, but I don't know if you guys prefer me to speak Rom on here.
That's
or
fine.
whatever.
Whatever you're comfortable
Whatever
with,
you're
yeah.
comfortable with. That's the keys. Whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm used to saying gypsy because that's
Well, yeah, that's what we all
we
say.
say at home, and that's
Right.
what we say what people were comfortable with. So I told her straight up that I was gypsy, and I don't remember what I said about what I would present as like my presentation or whatever, but I just remember telling her I was gypsy, and she looked at me with like a very confused face, and she was like, gypsy? What is gypsy? No, you're not. Those don't exist. And I remember like being a 6-year-old child in this moment when I think about it, and just like confused, like this lady is telling me that like my culture doesn't exist, and like what I know that I am and what my family is, and I hear my family saying that we're gypsy all the time, like why is she telling me this? And so that day my Bubba Laura picked me up. My Bubba is my grandmother, and she picked me up from school that day. And the teacher pulled her aside when she picked me up from school and told my Bubba what I said, that I was gypsy. And I remember her and my Bubba kind of like going back and forth, like having a conversation, and like my Bubba like kind of like giving her like assurance, you know? And so when they finished their conversation and me and my Bubba were walking back to her car, I specifically remember her holding my hand, and as we were walking, she turned to me and said, Emily, we can't tell people we're gypsy. You can't say that at school. You can't tell your teachers that, and you can't tell other kids that because they don't know what it's like. And so ever since that day, I grew up not telling any of my friends that I was gypsy and what my family was. And I always struggled a lot with my identity because all of my friends had a specific country they were from and a specific ethnicity that they identified with. A lot of my friends growing up were Hispanic or Middle Eastern or African American or European even, and they knew exactly where they came from. And I didn't know that because we were told, or I was always told that, you know, we come from Hungary and that's basically it. But like when I would look around a room of my family and I would research Hungary and do family projects on Hungary, you know, my whole childhood at school, I like, and even looking in the mirror, like I didn't like see myself. I didn't like recognize myself as like identifying with being Hungarian. Like I knew something was off. Like, yeah, I could have been Hungarian, but like I knew there was more to it, and like I knew that my dad like would always tell me stories about how gypsies originated in India and how we do have Indian blood somehow, but like we just didn't really know much about those type of things when I was a kid. There was no like DNA test really popular back then to get, so you really couldn't find out what you were. And growing up and having a bunch of friends that were of different ethnicities and different cultures, like I never knew what to say what I was. So like I was always scared when I would meet people for the first time and they would ask me, "Oh, so like what are you?" Like that such an easy question that I feel like people never really have to have a hard time saying. But for me, struggling with my identity, like I always like was really nervous answering that question.
Do you feel the same now?
No, I don't, because I actually got a DNA test, and my DNA test made so much sense and like relieved so much like out of me that like it's made me feel so much better about myself and my features and like why I look the way that I do, because I am basically a little over 40% Indian, and a really big percentage of Greek as well. And I do have traces of Middle Eastern blood as well that make up the rest of my genetic makeup. So when I looked at that, it kind of like all made sense to me. And I was like, oh, so that's why my hair is like that. Oh, that's why my nose looks like that. And that's why my skin color is like this, you know? And it made me feel so much better about myself. And it made sense to me because those cultures have always been something I've always been so curious about and connected to in a way. Like I always loved watching like Bollywood movies when I was younger. I thought they were so just beautiful and colorful, and the outfits and like Indian jewelry and everything. And then like I've always loved the Greek culture, Greek traditions. They're very similar to our traditions as gypsies. So
Right.
I always got along with a lot of Greek people my entire life, and most of my features actually represent Greek features. And like Greek mythology was like my obsession for years as a kid. And the Middle Eastern culture, and that's my favorite type of food. Like I love Mediterranean and Middle Eastern food, and it just like when you think about it, it really does all make sense because it's truly who you are at the end of the day. And because you come from those places, you do have that special interest and connection because of that.
Do you feel that essentially you feel more grounded as a Rom, knowing your past now, or do you feel that this is your chance to open up at least your identity further from going to just being Rom?
I think finding out what I am ethnically has helped me appreciate being a Romani girl more, because I always identified as being gypsy, you know, like I've always appreciated my culture, you know, even though that time during my childhood I struggled. And I remember having thoughts like, you know, why is this so hard being this? Like, why can't people like my culture? You know, like I struggled with those thoughts, and like oh, if I was from a different culture, like my life would be so much easier. I wouldn't have to lie about what I am to my friends or to professional, people that I meet. But I think that as I've gotten older, I have appreciated my culture more because I've met so many people in my life now that I realize not everybody gets to have a culture that is as cool and unique and very historical. And I feel like those three words kind of make up who I am as a person. And I think it's because of the way that I was raised in the culture and the traditions and everything. So even though I am Indian, Greek, and Middle Eastern, I'm Gypsy. So once I got to high school and I started making really close friends that I started bringing around to my family a lot, that's when I started opening up and saying that I was Gypsy to people. And now, being in my 20s in college, I tell everybody when I first meet them and they ask me that question, I don't hesitate anymore. Like I remember when I would first talk to somebody to be in a relationship with them, and I would hide the fact that I was Gypsy for a while from the guys that I've dated, because there's always that thought in the back of your brain that's like, what if they hate my culture and they don't want to be with me? And I've never had that experience, thankfully. Everybody who I've ever told has either not known the culture at all and I've taught them what it is and they know now, or the people I've met have known what being Gypsy was, but thought of it in the stereotypical way because they didn't have somebody who was Gypsy educate them about it. Yeah. And so I think as a young Gypsy woman in this generation, it's my, I want to say, I guess, duty to educate people, because one day when I bring children into this world, I don't ever want my kids to feel ashamed of their culture. And I want them to be able, and I want Gypsy people all over the world to be able to feel comfortable to tell people what they are and to celebrate their culture like every other culture does in this world.
And
Amen.
that's why Dead Scared's doing what they're doing.
I have one question though.
Yep.
When you do meet people for the first time, do you feel like there's a reason why a lot of them ask what your ethnicity is? It's because for me too as well, every time I meet somebody new, that's their first question is, what are you?
It's always that is always the first question that I get asked. Sometimes I have been approached by strangers who have come up to me in a random public place and have just came up to me to ask me what I am, because they're like, you just look so different. Like, we can't tell, what you are. And they've given their explanation that they're not racist or anything and looking at me in that way, but just the fact that I look so unique and they can't pinpoint where I could be from,
So one thing, and we can all agree on this, is the fact that the Roma in general love to get together regardless of what it's for.
Oh yeah.
And birthdays, christenings, whatever it may be, holidays in particular.
Funerals.
Yep.
It's true. And it's kind of funny because I think back to this, and the majority of the times that we all can think back to us getting together
Is funerals.
is funerals.
That was like our time to hang out, you and I.
Yeah.
So
That was the time for
that's
all
where
of
we
us.
literally
That's where
like
matches
met.
are
Yeah.
made. That's where
Yeah.
that's where instruments are sold. So many different things. And it's funny because you would think of with having a culture that's so superstitious that would definitely be one of the places where we'd have a lot more reverence. But it's just such an opening. So that's why when I think back to this too, and I think about how it's kind of ironic because the Roma they're very touchy about Halloween and about things that have to go with that.
Yes.
But yet the funny thing is so much of our culture deals with superstition that it's like kind of crazy. So so with that being said, what was Halloween like growing up for you? What was your favorite do you have a favorite Halloween memory or like something for the fall time in general? And I know you are a huge horror fan.
Yes.
You love Halloween just as much as I do. So this is why I can't wait to get into
we're
this.
in my room right now.
Exactly.
And there's Halloween decorations up 24/7.
Yep.
Exactly.
The dress you're sitting behind
Yeah.
has bats. My socks right now have bats on them.
Oh yeah. Where'd you get those socks?
Walgreens.
Hey, I'm headed to Walgreens. I'm going
The
to get
one
me some
right
bats.
here
right on the
too.
corner.
This is the one right
Well,
here.
on the way back home, we're going to get me some bat stockings.
And I got some with skulls on them too, skeletons.
I gotta get them. I gotta get them by rights.
So
This is Halloween town.
no, literally.
Yeah.
I love it. It's great.
Halloween to me has always just felt so comforting. And like you were saying, like Rom people have such a thing when it comes to like spooky things and Halloween and mule and like everything. It's like don't talk about that, and they're signing crosses and holding their rosaries, and it's like
Me.
yes, Raquel,
Me.
Completely.
Mother Mary.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
And I get it because
course.
like some things are scary, and as humans you have that sense of fear with scary things, and that's completely normal.
Yeah.
But it's fun.
It
It's
is.
so fun. It's fun to be scared.
Yes.
It's fun. Halloween is just such a fun time of the year to just pretend and dress up and show your creative side or whatever, whether you dress up or you don't. The decoration are so cute. And candy. Like, who doesn't like candy? Like, it's just such a fun time of the year. Growing up, I mean, I celebrated Halloween every single year. Obviously, I've always had multiple costumes, and once I got to like a certain age, I started like making my own costumes, and Halloween is like just my thing. I'm literally the Halloween queen, and by now, or in earlier than September even, all of my costumes are set out and bought. I'm PowerPointing my costumes for the season.
Nice.
I usually have multiple costumes, like 4 to 5 a year, usually.
Interesting.
I usually go like all out because it's like the one time of the year where you can really like go crazy,
And it's
True.
acceptable.
And it's acceptable.
It's freedom of expression
It
during this
is,
time, for
and
sure.
and me being just an artsy, creative person as it is too, it's my time to shine, And I love fashion and I love makeup, and it's my time to like express the very like eccentric styles that I could do, Something I wouldn't normally do on a normal basis.
Yeah, I feel you on that. So, if you had to give somebody like sort of a picture, like a mental picture of what it was like growing up, what was Halloween like when you were growing up? What were some were there certain movies or traditions that you had? What were like get-togethers with the family, especially what was that like?
Okay, so this is so nostalgic and it's gonna probably make me cry. I was just talking about this with my friends. We all got together like last month or something to start off the Halloween season early, and we watched Halloween Town together. And there was just like a certain part of the movie where like we all kind of started like tearing up, and we all like looked at each other and we're like, that part of the movie just like makes you feel like you're a kid again, waiting for it to come on Disney Channel. Because like there was no Disney Plus where you could just stream it any time of the year. You had to wait for October to come around for Halloween Town to be able to watch it, unless you had it on like VHS or DVD or whatever.
But even if you wanted to rent it during that time too, it was literally like a wait list.
Yeah, exactly.
So you just had to keep going to the Blockbuster Hollywood Video every day after your father would come home from work to take you.
Yeah, so I mean, I think as a kid, when I think back to my childhood and Halloween, I think of like the school like Halloween little parties where you'd like bring candy for all your friends, and you'd come home from school with like a giant bag of candy, and then like later, once like my parents would get home from work, we'd put our costumes on, and I would always be so mad and cry my eyes out because my mom would make me wear a turtleneck under my costume because it would be cold in Chicago for Halloween. So I'd always be arguing with my mom, saying like, the turtleneck is ruining my costume. Like, people can't ever like see what I really am because I'm wearing a turtleneck and a puffy like coat that makes me look like a marshmallow. And we'd go trick-or-treating around the neighborhood, and then we'd go to like my grandparents' house to trick-or-treat and go around their neighborhood, and like we'd meet up with like more family and family friends. And like Halloween was always like about the kids, you know? It was always about us like going trick-or-treating and getting all the candy we could get. And then like I just like would always remember like at nighttime like watching a classic like Halloween movie like Casper and Hocus Pocus and all those movies, and just like sitting on the floor and dumping out my gigantic bag of candy. And I would always sort my candy out and try to count how much candy I would have. And I'd always like separate like the different brands of candy. So like I'd have like piles of Kit Kats and whatever, like gummies and things like that. And I'd always like take out like the people who would give you like pencils and like stickers and stuff. I'd always like put that on like a pile.
Yeah.
So that was like Halloween night when I would do that and like sit in front of the TV and like put on a Halloween movie.
Yeah.
It was literally like an itinerary.
Yeah, like
and it was every
year.
Yeah, days before you'd get ready. Like, you'd know you'd be dressing up in a costume when you'd go to school for like the Halloween parade or whatever it is, costume party.
Yeah.
Then you'd come home, you'd sometimes change into a different costume.
Right.
You'd go trick-or-treating, crying your mother to take you hurry up. And then you'd eat something, come home, organize all the candy. Watch the movie, eat the candy, and knock out.
Yep.
It was the best.
And I remember, like, for the days to come, like, every single day
You're waiting.
for school, I would bring like my Halloween candy as like a part of my lunch.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know? And everybody
Oh,
would
that was the
like,
best.
yeah, like I remember like being so excited to like take candy to school.
You
You know?
trade it,
and
too.
yeah, everybody at the lunch table would be like trading their candies and stuff.
Back when you could do that.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
now,
true.
Now it's a little different.
That's
Yeah.
true. Ugh. You got me excited.
I know.
I'm all excited to
It's
do
so
this.
nostalgic, and like
Yeah.
as an adult now, like you don't get that same excitement and nostalgia. It's like
Yeah.
when you're a child, and maybe I'll feel that again when I have kids, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because like as a nanny, like when my kids are showing me like their costumes, or like we're going through their Halloween candy together, or watching a Halloween movie together, I get that sense of like, oh, I'm so happy they're feeling
Mm-hmm.
what I used to feel as a kid, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So Halloween for me has always been positive.
That's
But
great.
my family has always thought of Halloween as like a cute thing for kids, you know, whatever, but like not to believe in anything that
Yeah.
relates to Halloween.
Exactly. To be careful about how far into it you go.
Yes.
I can't even. I'm going to hold back because I'm getting a whole episode myself.
Okay.
Just because there's so much I have to say just on that alone.
Yes.
The superstitions and how they believe in everything. Ugh. Anyways. So on the same subject, and it's the truth. The one thing that we always look forward to is the fact that all these Halloween movies would be coming on television.
Yeah.
And the television specials alone, those were always the best. If you ever had a favorite cartoon or a favorite TV show, the best television episodes of those shows were always the Halloween
Yeah.
ones.
Yes.
Yes.
Always.
Yes.
Zach and Cody Halloween
Mhm.
episode.
Uh-huh.
Oh my god, yes.
So good.
You see what I mean?
Yes. I mean, it was always the Halloween episodes that were the best
Top notch.
episodes.
Right.
Top notch.
And now, if you go on like Disney Plus and stuff, they have a whole section.
Of the
Just
Halloween
for
ones, yeah.
Every show's
Mhm.
Halloween episode.
Yeah. Those were always the best. So with that being said, I mean, you already mentioned one, Zach and Cody. So what, okay, we can expand it to television. So what are your favorite, Halloween episodes from television, as well as what are your favorite scary movies and what scared you the most? What did you enjoy the most? Let's talk about that type of stuff because we can actually talk about something afterward that you and I both love.
I already know what you're talking
Exactly.
about.
If anybody knows me, they know where I'm going with this. So yeah, so tell us about like your favorite scary movies and favorite scary television shows and stuff.
I am a very, very true fan of like classic slasher horror films, meaning like Halloween and Michael Myers and Scream, Ghostface, Jason, Friday the 13th, and Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, those type of just classic horror movies you cannot beat. You cannot remake that type of scary movie. You know, people have tried to do it. People have tried to like make these slasher movies on Netflix and everything. And I still watch them because I'm gonna watch them.
Of course.
But
yeah.
it's just not the same feeling as watching those old movies that were made in the 70s and the 80s, and you know, it's just such a different feeling. I think my absolute favorite Halloween movie would be like the Scream series. And I feel like they're not super scary, you know? Like, they're not scary, so it's kind of like a surprising thing for me to choose for this topic, but it's just like the phone call and the girl alone in the house. It's just like such classic horror like screenplay.
Yeah, it's the tropes. They're literally just playing on all the tropes.
It's just like, that's what you think of when you think of a scary movie.
Mm-hmm.
And personally, I am not a fan of like paranormal stuff, like Paranormal Activity and like those type of movies. That has never resonated with me. I've never been a fan of that type of stuff.
So like, are you talking like Paranormal Activity and like say like something like Blair Witch?
Yeah.
Okay, I can see where you're coming from. Go ahead.
So like those types of movies and like Amityville and like I've seen a few, but it was always with people who wanted to watch them. It was never really my choice to like watch those type of movies. And I think honestly the scariest movie I've ever watched was Chucky, because I have just always had a extreme terrifying fear of Chucky. I first watched it when I was a kid. I was really, really young when I first watched Chucky. And I've never watched it since then, and I don't plan on ever watching it ever again.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
My family terrorizes me with Chucky still as a 22-year-old. Like, if they see a picture of Chucky somewhere on social media, they'll tag me in it. Or if they see, like, the Chucky doll at, like, a store or something, they'll text me a picture of it and be like, oh, he's coming for you. Like, things like that, you know? And, like, I still get scared because, I don't know, the whole concept of that movie is just terrifying.
Agreed.
It's so scary.
A possessed doll.
Yes.
Like, tell me you've done this. Because I know we've all, to anybody who's grown up in our generation or even a little older or even younger, tell me you've had the experience where you're laying in bed and for some reason you're just scared beyond belief and you think that Chucky's there. But mind you, on the other side of the bed, so you don't turn. You don't turn. Because if you turn around, he's there. He's waiting for you.
Yes. I mean, I'm not joking when I say, like, I don't get nightmares very often anymore. Yeah. As a kid, I had nightmares very often. And most of the time, Chucky would be in the nightmare. As an adult, sometimes I still get nightmares involving Chucky.
Wow.
Yes, I specifically remember a nightmare that I had like a couple years ago. I was like a teenager, where I was in like a warehouse, and it was dark. And when I turned the lights on, it was a Chucky warehouse. So like the whole entire warehouse was all Chucky dolls. And one of them in the boxes was really him. And, like, I had to, like, try to escape without, like, getting caught by him. And I still remember this nightmare because, I mean, I woke up in the middle of the night, like, panting from this dream.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Oh. Now, the funny thing is we look back on these dreams and these memories and we're like, haha, that's crazy. But then, mind you, the day of, we were just, like, dead. We just felt like it was like you just went through
trauma.
Yeah, really. PTSD from a dream. Yeah, it's crazy. But I completely agree. Like, I can relate with that because that was one of the movies that got me as a kid.
Yeah. Really.
Because we couldn't watch things like The Exorcist. That wasn't allowed in the house.
Yeah, that wasn't allowed in my house either. It still is not.
Exactly, same here. We're like, the only reason I've been able to see it is because I went by my Gaja friend's house.
Yeah.
And they were like, they're crazy enough to put it on.
Right.
Keyword, they're crazy enough to put it on. But aside from that, it's always been, and we always like to ask this because this is where Dead Scare Entertainment, this is our bread and butter. The one thing that was constantly on with us was like the classic Universal monsters. So we're talking from the 30s, 40s, 50s, essentially.
Yes.
Do you have any memories with those particular?
I
films?
do. That is a whole other realm of horror movies for me. Those are like the classic of the classics, and those are like the foundation for everything that has been made
The OGs.
till now. Yes. I do remember watching like Wolfman and Frankenstein and like I don't know, I remember watching these as a kid, and I don't really remember the specific names of the movies, but I do know them and I'm aware of them. And like that's something now that I think of all the time, like where can I find these movies? Like I want to watch those black and white old movies like Dracula and The Creature of the Black Lagoon and all those, But I do have memories of watching those as a kid with like family members. Like I remember watching them at like my great grandma's house as a kid with like my uncle and like, cousins or whatever. Like it would be on, oh, it's a black and white picture, that's why.
A spooky picture.
Yeah. So, like, my aunt used to say the Moulin movies.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love those movies, and I that's something I want to be more familiar with in the horror culture is, like, rewatching those and finding those movies. Because they're kind of hard to find.
Well, come by my house. They're not.
Okay.
I have multiple copies of every one of them.
Amazing.
So I'll say this. This is a new question. I think we're definitely going to add this eventually to future ones. I wish I could have asked this. But if you had to say, if there was one particular monster from that lineup, because everybody's pretty much generally familiar with like the different, with different ones of the different movies. If there was one monster in particular that you can say was your favorite, or that is your favorite, what would that be?
So are you speaking
Like towards Universal monsters?
Okay,
like,
so it's like
Black and White films.
Wolfman
Yeah,
and
all of them. Yeah.
okay. That's a hard one. I'm gonna have to say like Dracula.
That's not a bad choice.
Well, I knew you were gonna say that, but it's because I just love vampires. I think they're so interesting, and I do truly believe in them. So,
Well, that's good because that's the next question.
oh,
Yeah.
wonderful.
What's shaking, OVD fans? This is Pierce Horvath, co-founder of Dead Scared Entertainment. Raquel and I are so glad to have you listening to each and every episode of Verda Darano, and we'd greatly appreciate it if you'd give us a 5-star rating and leave a positive review on whatever platform you tune in from. This will help us reach more fantastic fans just like you and make the shadows just that much more friendly. We put a lot of effort into this, and all our content, including drawing videos, true paranormal experiences, and even more, is all accessible at deadscaredentertainment.com. And if you'd like to reach us through the ether and contact us regarding content ideas, general questions, or just to say hello from the other side, slither or swoop your way over to the Contact Us page on deadscaredentertainment.com. Thank you for listening. And now, back to your favorite bone-chilling broadcast, O Verda Darano.
Obviously, you believe in vampires, so do you believe in things like werewolves and aliens and ghosts? Do you believe in things like that?
Do you believe in the Bacanias?
Well, actually, before I get to this question,
Sure.
back to the whole Universal monster thing.
Yeah.
When I went to Universal Studios in 2019, they have a section of Universal Studios dedicated to the monsters, and there's a restaurant, and it's like, monster themed. And I literally begged my parents, like, the food in the, parks like that are terrible. They have, as much money as it costs to get into Disneyland and Universal Studios, they could upgrade their food.
Agreed.
Right.
They really can.
I will say Disney I have not been to Universal in years, but Disney has upgraded their food just a tad. Not a lot, a little bit.
Well, there's a few
go ahead.
Disney
Yeah.
foods that are good, like the
Yeah.
Dole Whips and the churros
Well,
and
yeah.
things like that. But like
You can't go wrong with that.
when you're eating like
The street
at the
food type
rush,
stuff.
yes,
Yeah.
when you're eating at the restaurants in the parks, the restaurant food just never hits, and it's always so overpriced. But I begged my family to eat at the place for lunch because as soon as I saw it, there's like a signal in my brain that just, I get serotonin and I get so excited and I'm like, I have to see what it is. And like you go in and there's like different rooms in the restaurant that are like themed for each character. And the food is like named after things and whatever. And there was like some drink with like dry ice in it, and it was like green and like bubbly and like super cool. And I got it because it was like something like Frankenstein's experiment or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And we sat in the room Dracula's lair.
All of Roma always sit in Dracula's.
Of course.
Everyone sits in Dracula's. I realize that. Plain and simple. We down the line, we all do.
So we sat in Dracula's lair, and it was just so cool. And there was like these huge pictures framed on the wall of the classic characters, and they were just so detailed and beautiful, and they were like paintings and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish they had a place like that in Chicago, because
yeah.
I would go all the time.
I would live
I
there.
would build one. I would team up.
How many times did you and I decide on making a restaurant like this?
And you guys know I cook, so I would take care of the kitchen
cooks,
aspect.
She cleans. She takes care of the kids. She does it all.
I'm a good gypsy girl.
Yeah. She was raised right.
Yeah, there we go. So should I break the news to her about the Monster Cafe?
What Monster Cafe?
The Monster Cafe we've
Oh.
been talking about.
In Universal?
It's gone.
Are you kidding me?
They just closed it this summer. No warning.
You're joking.
No warning. This just
Yeah.
happened out of nowhere, and they just for the season, they made like a small like kiosk, essentially.
Yeah. Are you kidding?
You know the ones you could like go up to? and
Yeah,
get
yeah,
little
yeah, like
snacks
a little
from?
shack.
Yeah.
But the actual restaurant is closed down.
No.
They just did it this summer. So many people in the Universal Monsters community did not know where to put themselves.
That is so sad.
Mind you,
That was like where we would go.
oh, that was all.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Universal
because of
Studios.
every time we would go, it's because of me. I'd say,
Yeah.
oh yeah, we're eating there.
Yes,
There's
I
so
have
many
to go there
pictures
every
and
time.
videos and everything from.
I've been to Universal
Babies.
Studios twice in my whole life, and like I've always gone there.
Did you see
Harry Potter.
Beetlejuice's Graveyard Review?
No.
Oh my gosh, she didn't never seen it. Okay, so essentially, Beetlejuice had a show with the Universal Monsters,
Oh yeah,
and they would go through.
you didn't see it.
No.
Of all-
I've seen Beetlejuice,
Yeah,
but I did not see the show.
he had a show,
It's a whole
a whole
show.
section
And they do like covers
of all popular
of all
songs.
popular songs.
So
yeah.
90s, early 2000s
Yeah.
songs. And the monsters
They're
would be
dancing in the
singing
crowd
and
and
dancing,
everything.
and there'd be light effects and fire, and it was just amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
You need to look
Yeah.
it up online. Definitely need to look this up online. You
Yeah.
will love this.
I wonder if it's still there though.
No, it's gone. They canceled that about, I would say like early 2010s.
Yeah, see, I
There you go. There's why.
mean, the first time I ever went to Universal was 2010. And then
yeah.
the next time I went was 2019.
There you go.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And I'll say this. It's terrible that we're losing these things, but then it also makes sense why. Because here's where the flip side comes in. They are dedicating a whole section, a new build, like constructions being considered now for a whole themed area just for the monsters alone.
As they should.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So just how Harry Potter has his own little universe, the Universal monsters are going to have their own.
How do you
They
know
should have been the
this?
first ones to have their
Emily,
first their
I know,
section
because when it comes down to this, if you look at all these multiverses and all this stuff that we like talk about today in popular film culture, they were the first to do that, to have these crossovers and to build like essentially this world where they have a shared universe.
Yeah.
It was them. It wasn't DC, wasn't Marvel, it was them. So with that being said, it only makes sense that they're doing this now. And I got my connections. This is why I know all these things. I'm right into that. I'm on the pulse with all this.
I believe there are vampires in this world today still as well. I believe that if there are vampires in America, they'd be somewhere in the South, in the southern states. I think that vampires aren't what we think of exactly, like sleeping during the day and can only come out at night type of thing, and like being super white and like, I don't know. I just don't think vampires are like how
the media
exaggerated they are in the media, you know?
So what's your vision of like an
My
actual
vision
vampire?
of a vampire is somebody who can just pass as a normal human in today's world, because I feel like vampires obviously originated a very long time ago, and I do believe that vampires have come from like Transylvania and like places like that in Europe, because it just makes sense in my brain. Like,
Okay.
when I think of a vampire, I think of a very like gothy type of person too, like a stereotype vampire. But like,
Sure.
I feel like vampires have like adapted to like human culture to fit in, because I feel like they're not going to just openly be vampires. But yeah, I think they're real, and I think if they're in America, they're somewhere down south.
Why there?
Because I think the South is very historical. I think there's a lot of history in the South. There was a lot of movement, different people coming and going in the South a lot. Obviously, a place like New Orleans has to have a population of vampires somehow. And if I'm ever able to meet one day, hey.
You're looking at him. You're looking at him.
No, but like it would be, I
Yeah.
think it'd be really cool to like really in-depth like research vampirism and find out if it really is real. How would somebody come up with the idea of a vampire? if it's not real, you know?
Right.
I feel like in order to create things, you have to know a background of something to base that character or to base that creation off of, you know? And like, I don't think vampires can turn into bats or like, you know, anything like that. Like for a human body to transform into a bat. Like,
If only.
yeah.
Those are the words. If only. But yeah.
But like, I don't know. I just think they've adapted as to society, to wherever they live, and you know, tried to blend in as much as they can, because I feel like nowadays, like, I mean, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if like there was a news story that would be like, oh, vampire found in blah blah blah, whatever.
Yeah.
But like people would just like not react well to it at all.
It'd be a meme.
Yeah, it would totally be a meme. People would not take it serious at all. People would think it's a joke. And like I said, if I ever meet a vampire one day, hey, my home is your home.
Hey. What's up? How you doing?
Hey, y'all.
I'd be down to sit down with you and have a nice cup of coffee or
Joe.
blood or whatever you like, and a coffee, a cake or something, and get to know them. And I just think it's real. It's not a myth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll say this. Based on my own research and from what I know, there are different, it's a spectrum. You could either get somebody who's more or less a representational vampire. So this is where you'll see like the majority of people that also inhabit like the goth sort of communities, stuff like that. People who kind of represent themselves in that sort of facade. But then there are people out there, and this is partly my opinion, but this is also partly fact. There are people that are over here making deals and doing things, rituals and such, that would in turn, at least in their belief, give them the ability to consume human life force, whether that be through blood or even just from an energy exchange. And that just dives into a whole nother realm of talking about supernatural occurrences, abilities, and just that's a whole cave of crazy going down. But it's true.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm glad you said that, because you're the first, because everybody else is like, no, I don't believe in that, but I believe in ghosts, which I mean, I think that's something that's a consensus. Everybody down the line, at least that we're going to be talking to, all believe in that. So are you one of those people too, Emily?
I do believe in ghosts.
Okay.
Like I believe in all of those supernatural things that you mentioned. I believe that werewolves have a very human-like connection. And aliens, I believe, are real. And like, how can there not be life on other planets? You know, like, if there's life on Earth, there has to be life on other planets. Why just Earth? You know, like, why would God or the universe or whatever just create life on only Earth? So yeah, I believe aliens are real. Ghosts, I believe, are real. And I can tell you a few things about them.
You should.
So, I've had positive experiences mostly with ghosts. I personally am a very spiritual person. And I have like a connection to I don't know how to explain it, like how to say this, but like
The supernatural and
yeah,
spiritual
like I'm not a
realm.
medium. I can't
You're sensitive.
communicate
Yeah.
with I can't communicate with spirits in that way that mediums can. But I do dream of things, and I can get messages in my dreams, and things happen in my dreams and will happen in real life after I dream of it. And that's something I experienced my entire life since I was a kid. So as a kid, like, I like was like, oh my God, like, I think I'm a witch. Like, I think I'm a witch. Like, you know, as a kid, like, you want to, like, believe that you're something like that, or like when you're swimming, like, oh my God, like my tail is gonna appear. But with ghosts, yeah, most of my experiences have been pretty positive. My parents' podcast episode will kind of go into more of the negative aspects of it, but the stories that I have from my experience as a kid starting were not very like negative, but not also like I wouldn't really consider it like a positive.
Okay.
I don't know. So when I was around 3 years old, we moved into an apartment, and this was an apartment with my parents, and then eventually my brother was born into this apartment. In this apartment complex, there was a lot of weird things that have happened. As a 3-year-old, it is like a proven fact that children and dogs have the ability to see and communicate with spirits. So at 3 years old, I had a friend that I used to play with at home, and we'd be running around my house together, and we'd be in my room playing with my toys, and we'd talk and sit and whatever, and we were together all the time. And my parents asked me one day, and they were like, Emily, who are you playing with? And I was like, the little boy. And they were like, what do you mean the little boy? Like, what little boy?
Mm-hmm.
And I would tell them, the little boy, he's right here, we're playing. And there was a little boy that I used to play with, and I thought that I was just having a play date, and he was my friend, but only I could have seen him. Nobody else could have seen him. And I remember, this is not like a story that, you know, was like retold to me and I just know it from like my parents' perspective. I remember playing with a little boy, and he was nice. He wasn't there to, you know, we weren't doing no harm. We were playing like little kids, running around the house, playing tag and, you know, playing with my stuffies, you know, like things like that. So that was like the first experience. And, you know, people might take that as, oh, she had an imaginary friend, you know? I saw him. It wasn't an imaginary friend. Imaginary friends you make up in your brain and you don't see them. This is like a kid that I saw in my house. And so...
Was he like a normal kid? Like dressed like how maybe like a kid of the day would be dressed? Or was he dressed differently?
I can't really remember the way he was he was dressed per se, but like he was just like a kid in my mind. Like the way I remember him, he was just a kid. He was a little boy. He had like straight like hair, you know, that kind of like came down to his forehead, kind of like a little bowl cut type of thing. Just a little boy. And so, yeah, I don't remember him being in specific clothing, like trousers.
Right.
Just like a little sailor.
Yeah. With a little paperboy hat or anything.
Right.
Yeah. Portolo.
Yeah. Sounds
But I do have another experience where I do remember like what somebody was wearing.
Okay.
So I remember, since it was an apartment building, an apartment complex, whatever, you know, you'd go up like your stairs and you'd have to like be unlocking your door, and then there would be like another staircase going up, or like the apartment like next to you or whatever, you know. So I remember like my mom unlocking our apartment door. And I was like standing behind her, and like I looked to my side and I saw a man, and he was a tall man, dressed in like kind of like a suit, like more dressier type of clothes. And he had like a mustache. He was a little bit older. I think he had a hat on. And he was like standing in like the doorway of the apartment like next to us. You know, like there was like distance between us. And the little boy was standing next to him, holding his hand. And when I turned back, like when I turned my head back, you know, straight, and then I looked over again, they weren't there anymore. And like obviously they weren't unlocking the door to the other apartment, you know, like they didn't have like keys in their hands to unlock the door, and the door didn't open or anything. They just weren't there anymore. And like when I was a kid, I didn't think, oh my god, was that a ghost? Like I just kind of like brushed it off and didn't really think about it after that. But yeah, those were like my two experiences that I like can remember.
Wow.
Yeah.
So since then, since childhood, have you had any supernatural or paranormal type experiences that dealt with spirits, or did you ever feel like an ominous feeling of some sort ever since? Because you said you're spiritual. You feel like you have a connection to these things.
Yeah, so it's always been very positive. When I like think about it, or like when I get a feeling, it's a very like light feeling. I never have a dark feeling. I never feel a sense of like scaredness when I get like a feeling. It's more so of like the hair on the back of my neck stands up, and it's like not in a scary way, but it's just my body kind of like reacting. Like
you're aware.
I'm just yes, it's like awareness. And I feel like it's people coming to visit me, like loved ones on the other side that are just coming to say hello and check in on me and see how I'm doing, you know? Or I've had a couple instances where I've been around people who've experienced like a loss and getting that feeling around them. you know, like
Right.
being with that person who's experienced like a recent loss, and I get that sense of like, oh, there's someone here, you know? But yeah, like I said, like I can't really communicate with them or anything, but it's just like a sense that I have. It's a sense, and it's kind of comforting at times, you know, when you're missing somebody who isn't here anymore, and you kind of get that, like, I can get like a certain feeling, like when I'm thinking about them, like sometimes I will feel that feeling, and like it just brings comfort to me, because it's like, well, even though I can't see them or communicate with them, like they're still here checking up on me. And it's just a sense of peace.
I love that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's something. So, and you can literally say at this point that you can consider yourself blessed to have the experience that all these sort of otherworldly sensations that you experience are all of a positive nature.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're very lucky.
I'll
say that. You're very lucky.
Thank you.
Because not everybody could say that.
Yeah, I know.
Believe me.
I know. I mean, I hate actually hearing like other people's experiences, because like I don't like, I feel like when you speak out loud about something, you're manifesting
Yes.
that. And so I don't like being around that, because like my experiences have always been so positive, and I'd like to keep it that way.
Fair.
So like I just try not to be around people, or like be in like be in like a room where people are like talking about things like that, because I'm like not trying to manifest that in my life. I'd rather keep it in the positive, peaceful, comforting way that I feel it.
Ditto.
Fair. Well, then I guess I gotta keep my mouth shut. That's for sure.
We can talk about that when we're not in my bedroom.
Fair.
Right.
Fair. Nah, it's so true, because I'll say this. Some people are lucky to feel just feelings outside of just what they feel in this realm, you know, whether it be positive or negative. And some people ask for it, some people don't, you know, and that's what you realize, is you kind of get what you get. You kind of, I don't know if you have to put like a spectrum, or like if you have to put like, oh gosh.
A label?
Not like a label. You know, like how, look how I'm blanking on the man's name. I know that there's some nerd in here who's going to be able to recognize what I say immediately, or maybe you'll understand where I'm coming from. Remember when we were studying genetics and biology, and how they would have the different layout of how the gene ratios would probably show up?
Chromosomes.
No.
Look, I don't
It
know
was
nothing.
were you
The squares.
Yeah, Punnett squares.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. See what I mean? The Punnett square. Okay. So, you know, like how you can go to the extreme where you have two dominants or like two recessive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were like, you got
This
like.
is giving me PTSD of biology.
So, like in your case, you're like, you got the best, like the cream of the crop, essentially, at this point. Some of us
Right,
don't
right.
always get the cream of the crop.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah. You believe that the Roma have a connection to the supernatural or energies beyond our realm? Do you feel like we have a specific, like a exclusive interaction with this sort of these two worlds?
Of course. I think that if anything, I feel like we'd be the most related to vampires. Because of Eastern Europe. And I feel like there, back in the day, you know, like there had to be some sort of connection between Roma and vampires. And wasn't Dracula gypsy?
So, in the story, he wasn't. It never necessarily specified his cultural background, other than the fact that he was a true-blooded Romanian.
Okay.
But the people that served him and helped him, like, transfer like his boxes of earth, from his castle to the ships and back, were Roma.
Mm-hmm.
So they're involved in the story.
Okay.
Our people are involved
So,
heavily in Eastern European.
The reason
war.
why I was thinking about this recently actually is because I asked you earlier if you watched Vampire Diaries. So the character, I don't know if you guys are familiar.
Are you team Salmon or Harold?
That's not their names.
Whatever their names are.
Stefan and Damon.
Yeah.
Salvatore.
Salmon and Harold. Where did you come from? Completely different names.
I am so sorry, Paul Wesley and Ian Somerhalder.
If they would hear this, imagine that. They comment, "Who is this girl? She's canceled. Kick her off the show."
So I don't know if you're familiar with the characters or anything.
Not necessarily, but soon.
Okay, so
Soon I'll watch
basically, the main character Elena, she has a doppelganger, and her name is Catherine Pierce. That's her American name that she adapted. But she's from Bulgaria, and her Bulgarian true birth name is Katerina Petrova.
Mm-hmm.
And so her family were witches. And her father, there's a certain type of witch that they talk about in the show that's called a traveler witch. And her father was a traveler. And he came from the traveler witches. And there's a part of the show where Stefan actually says gypsies.
Yeah.
He says it in the show. I gotta look for the episode because I just watched the episode maybe last week or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I was watching it in bed, and it was I think it was actually Stefan's doppelganger who said it. His name is Silas. He's Stefan also has a doppelganger. But he said something oh, the gypsies, something about the traveler witches. So there's a connection in the show with gypsies being involved in it. In the supernatural, being these witches. I totally believe that gypsies have some sort of supernatural connection, whether it be vampires or whether they're witches or whether
they do claim
connected to spirits or whatever.
Yeah, claim to be witches, a lot of them.
Yeah, there are a lot of Roma that are witches and practice
the craft, of course.
Yeah. And I think a lot of them, too, are, generational.
Yeah.
And so that's a different aspect, though, because, there are a lot of Roma who are scared of that stuff and who think it's taboo, oh, don't talk like that, so it just kind of really depends on the family you're from and if your family is extremely Catholic and religious or if your family believes in that part of the culture.
So where do you feel that you lie personally? Do you feel that essentially that because you have this ability to feel more and that you feel more spiritual, would you consider yourself a witch? Would you consider yourself somebody who at least can relate to these types of people who identify as witches, or how do you feel about that?
Personally, I don't consider myself a witch. I wouldn't consider myself a witch because I don't practice witchcraft or anything.
Got you.
My family nobody in my family like is like that, you know? So everybody has always just been on the aspect of being scared of that stuff and believing in superstitions, and like I've always been the like weird freak of the family because like I'm into this stuff. I'm into like learning about these things and I believe in these things. So I've always been the one who's like the black sheep, you know? So yeah, I wouldn't consider myself a witch or any of that because I don't practice that, and I just don't feel like considering myself a witch is like appropriate for the ability that I have. I don't know what I would consider that. That's why I just say I'm spiritual, because like because I'm able to like have this sense of like positivity and peace with feeling when spirits are around. And like the whole dream thing that I said, like the dream prediction thing, like I really don't know what to call that. I wouldn't specifically label it as psychic either. So I don't know, it's just something that I'm able to do, really.
Gotcha. That's something. Well, in that case, I mean, it's pretty clear. And it's so far with everybody that we've interviewed, it's been a resounding yes. That there's just something, there's this extra sensory ability that the Roma have in general when it comes to this type of, you know, the supernatural or other realms, essentially, just that are
Who
beyond
else
our
have agreed?
Name them. They've all
Really?
agreed. They've all agreed. For the most, well, except one in particular, and we'll discuss that later.
Okay.
But
That was a very interesting interview.
yeah, we will talk about that.
Okay.
But then we have one thing that I would like you to close us out with. And again, Emily, it was nothing but a pleasure. You took me back to the point where I'm sitting here. I'm like, you know what? I want to go get me one of the Halloween Happy Meals with the
They're
little.
coming back
I know,
out with
this
the
is why I
90s
mentioned
ones.
it.
Yeah.
And I want to get the little coupon book
Yeah.
with all
They have them in
Yes.
Detroit.
I know.
They're in Dearborn.
Well, I want that with the Halloween pail, and I want to go and put on, what's it called? Some Goosebumps, or I want to go put on
you know,
some
Hocus Pocus
the
Part
Ronald
2.
McDonald Scared Silly.
Yes. Far-flung.
Yeah, Forest.
If you had to leave the Romanian people with a few words, whether that be Roma today or the Roma of the future, if there would be a message you would like to give our people, what would that be?
Do better. Meaning educate people around you instead of being scared, because I see it in a lot of the Roma adults around me till this day that are scared to be themselves and to still, you know, hold in their culture. Just do better, educate people around you, and if people don't like what you are, then they don't need to be a part of your life. And you don't ever need to see those people again. And also strive to be a better person and use your culture as an advantage. I think not enough organizations in this world, speaking as somebody who's in college, recognize the Roma people for being a minority in this world, and they don't recognize the struggles that we face. And I think that we need to use our voices to be heard and to be recognized to make a change in the world and the change for the way the world views us. And that's it.
I agree.
All right, then. Well, Emily, again, it was nothing but a pleasure talking with you.
Thanks, Miss Gypsy Girl.
And we
Thank
definitely, who
you.
knows, maybe we'll have you on future podcast episodes and
Oh,
obviously in
sure.
other content for
Of
sure.
course. I would love to.
Gia kor mangav tuke baktalotrom breko tunyaripe.
That sounded like a spell.
Until then, I wish you safe travels through the darkness. Gypsy gal check.
All right. This broadcast of Verda Darano was brought to you by the talents of Pearson Raquel Horvath, creators of Dead Scared Entertainment, with the help of Piroshka Raj. You've been listening to a production from Dead Scared Entertainment, where terror is our tradition. Good night.